Good morning, TDers. I am back to answer more of your questions. After kind of a long weekend of working, I was kind of glad to jump back in. I actually have a lot of asks in my inbox, so I'm hoping to get a bunch of these done this week. But we are just going to jump right in. I can't believe it's been almost 10 years since Coda, Time Really Flies, but I had an epiphany today. If Daryl Dixon Season 2 comes in the fall, it could possibly end on November 30th, as in the anniversary of that shitty episode where we lost her, and then we see she's actually alive. It's wishful thinking, but I find myself thinking a lot about Beth lately, more than I have in a while. Maybe this also has something to do with the 10 clocks in Slabtown. Those damn clocks still haunt me. Yeah, for sure, it's possible. I've become a little bit reluctant over the years to hone in on a single date that we think she might be back because it's just never really worked out for us. Lots of times we've thought she might show up in a particular month or on an anniversary or on a particular holiday, and it just has never actually happened. So I don't know, I'm reluctant to give a specific date like that, but obviously it's possible whenever she's going to show up is when she's going to show up. And I do hear you about the clocks. The clocks are something that we know for sure was a symbol. We, have never nailed down exactly what they mean, and there's been all kinds of theories, but Gimple confirmed that those clocks were put there on purpose and meant something. So yeah, the clocks should haunt you until we figure out what exactly they meant. Just another symbol that's never been explained, and again, you would think if they really just kill her off and scrap that whole storyline, that they would come out and explain it to us. Like, oh, okay, well, she's dead and not coming back, so this is what the clocks meant, but they've never done that. And that's really kind of suspicious to me. So, yeah, thank you for the ask. Again, we don't know when it's going to start. I kind of think it's going to be before the fall just because of Norman's post, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. That would be great if she showed up on the anniversary. That would be fun. Next one. I thought about this the other day and I had a laugh, but it may have some merit. I'm a huge fan of Real Housewives on Bravo, and one of the housewives talks incessantly about how she's on pause from the show, but will return someday because that's what the network told her, LOL. I couldn't help but think about Emily being so emotional on The Talking Dead, and I understand why. Say she's on pause, then she would be on pause for a long time, longer than we could have anticipated, longer than even Gimple or the network might have known. The show has had bumps in the road with COVID and streaming rights and whatnot, and by the time she's back, she will be with a whole new cast, but will never work with some of her fellow castmates again, not counting Norman, Andy, Melissa, etc. So it's understandable that she would be so upset because she is leaving and will miss everybody, but will come back when the time is right. I know that they kept pushing the timing of other actors leaving the show for a few years, but it was the plan all along. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it happens more often than we realize. I'm sure the skeptics would argue that Real Housewives is, it's like a reality show, but all shows are scripted to an extent and have to be planned out. And so I think having people come and go or planning for them and then it getting pushed, I think that's just part of the industry. And yes, it was very particularly and even diabolically planned in this case by Gimple, but I just don't even think that that's a big deal. Look at something like Lost, that the characters actually came and went a lot on that show. They would disappear and then 2 seasons later, either they would come back for real or they would come back like as a hallucination and of course we don't think that'll be the case with Beth. We don't think she's just going to be a dream or a hallucination, but they still would have to plan that and tell the actors, okay, well, you got to hang around because we're going to have you back for this episode, So it really does happen all the time. It's just they don't always do a death fake out with it. So yeah, I totally think you're right about that. And I remember thinking the same thing, that she probably really was sad to leave, especially after season 6. I know that she and Stephen Yeun, who played Glenn, were really close. They were really good friends. And she probably had at least some inkling that, some of them were going to get killed off before she came back, and therefore it would just never be the same again. It would never be them working together on set again for the show. And so a lot of that, I've thought that before too, that a lot of that might have been real. But yeah, I totally agree. I don't have anything to contradict what you said. I think that that's true, and it's something that we need to take under advisement, and it's hard to be patient. I get it, but we still just kind of have to be patient. So thank you for that ask. Okay, I have lost and regained hope time and time again when it comes to Beth over the years, but something about Emily cutting her hair and keeping those long bangs even after she cut them back in the fall, that has me in a chokehold. I don't ever worry too much about the hair situation, or the hair game, as Eugene would call it. To give an example, when they did do a death fake out, after just saying in that last ask that they don't always do death fake outs, which they don't always, obviously. But another big one is Game of Thrones with Jon Snow. I had a feeling he would come back. I wasn't as invested in that as I obviously am in Walking Dead. So I wasn't even really looking for super big evidence or anything with that. It was more like in the story, I could see that there were things that they were going to have to bring him back in some way for. So I didn't really know how the story was going to go, if he was going to come back for real, or if it was going to be like he was a ghost or a specter, or, it's a fantasy world. They have magic. Lots of things could happen. But I wasn't terribly concerned about him not coming back. But I know that there were fans of that show, just like us, who were freaking out because it looked like they killed him off. And the thing is, in order to misdirect the fans, they had him cut his hair like really short. He had long hair, like longer than Norman's is, and he has curly hair, naturally kind of full curly hair, and he shaved it off. And, people saw that as he's not coming back, and he still came back, guys. And you got to realize that it's Hollywood. There are wigs, there are hair dye. If they needed her hair to be longer, she could get extensions, but they could also just say that Beth cut her hair. I mean, it's not difficult for her hair to be different when she comes back. Remember that Emily did Masters of Sex, and she was wearing a brunette wig that was really convincing. It really looked like that was her hair. And if anyone had told me she had dyed her hair, to do that part, I probably would have believed them, because it looked really real. And the only reason I know it wasn't is because she posted on social media pictures of her getting the wig put on, So I just don't worry about the hair game at all. I mean, in the apocalypse, you're still going to have to cut your hair every once in a while, or it's going to grow really long and become unmanageable. So, people always jump on that as a reason that she's not coming back, and I just don't think that's terribly logical, because it's Hollywood and they can do whatever they want with her appearance. So, yeah, I don't worry about that too much. I get it, and I get that a lot of people like to get online and say she cut her bangs, therefore it means she's never coming back, but that's like I said, just kind of illogical. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. I think that if they want to, let's put it this way. There's that joke from season 4 about where Norman was telling her she might have to shave her head, which was, as we know, not true. I guess it would be interesting if she came back with a shaved head. But anyway, the point is she could come back looking however they want her to look. So anyway, okay. Moving on to the next one. I don't know if you listened to this interview, but I decided to listen to the Talk Dead to Me podcast episode from 2020 when Christine Woods, who played Dawn, was a guest, because I was morbidly curious about what she had to say. Some interesting tidbits. Yeah, I did listen to it, but it was a long time ago. I didn't, I might have done a post about it, but I didn't remember finding anything that was like a hugely smoking gun, but I'm interested to see what you found. Okay, the thing she remembers the most is when EK found out she was going to die. She says she doesn't think EK knew until really close to the end, which matches with what we've heard before, and she felt really bad for her because it's the worst thing you can hear as an actor. She remembers the day EK got the news she would die, and she said Emily was really rocked by it, and Christine felt horrible and even apologized for having to be the one to take her off the show she's been on for years. Also said EK is amazing and a total professional. They had a lot of rehearsals for the shooting scene, and it was handled with a lot of care. She has also known Gimple since 2009 after working with him on another show, and said every little detail is important in his writing. It's all leading toward the big picture. She also said she never watched the show until she got the job, and she couldn't make it past season 3 because it was too bleak, LOL. All in all, the interview was really short, and she didn't really talk too much about Beth dying. I wouldn't be surprised if she knew nothing about what was going on behind the scenes with Gimple and Emily. She was only a guest star, and she wouldn't need to be privy about that info. The only members of Game of Thrones, hey, there's a Game of Thrones mention, who knew Jon Snow was coming back was Kit Harington and the showrunners. Everyone else thought he was dead. Sophie Turner even wrote him a long letter explaining how much she was going to miss him, and so did Emilia Clarke. Yeah, so I agree. There's definitely some interesting things in here. Here's the thing, though, about Christine Woods. The only reason, I would normally agree with you. I don't think they tell every single actor who's on the show, guest starring, small only an episode or two actor that's about the whole big picture. So I would agree with that, except for one thing. Christine Woods is one that I would be really surprised if she didn't know. And the only reason that I say that is because we're pretty sure that the other actors who played the Grady cops know. Them and Eric Jensen, who played Dr. Edwards, they have left some really obvious signs on their and messages on their social media that tell us they probably know. There was one not too long ago, and I don't remember what it was, but it caused everyone to dig up some old ones. I mean, Eric Jensen literally, and it was not too long after Coda. It was probably season 6 or season 7, so it was years ago now. He posted something on his social media that was a picture of the Mona Lisa, but the face had been warped to look like a walker, and it had a bullet hole in the forehead exactly where Beth got shot. I mean, we're now coming up on something in Daryl Dixon where they're going to go to the Louvre and probably see the Mona Lisa, right? I mean, it's just too coincidental that they wouldn't know, and I just think if the other Grady cops, who had an even smaller role than Christine Woods had, knew, she had to have known. There's no way she wouldn't know. So I'm reluctant to say that she doesn't know, but I think just like everyone else, she has talking points. She has things that she's allowed to say, and that's why I remember not finding much in this interview. I was like, not really any smoking guns. She didn't say anything that's really given me the TD feels. So yeah, I don't know. We obviously don't know for sure, but I have a hard time believing that she didn't know. What else did you say here? What really jumps out at me, I guess, based on what you said, is what they're saying about Nicotero and the shooting being handled with a lot of care. I mean, again, if it was handled with a lot of care, then they did it on purpose. They did the weird physics of it that didn't line up on purpose. They purposely placed where the gunshot wound or where the entry wound that you see was going to hit her. This isn't really something we don't know. Nicotero has told us this many times, that they actually have medical consultants on set with them. And that's for everything. That's for even, a walker takes a bite out of someone's leg. They want to be able to show all the gory ligaments and tendons and everything, and they want to be able to do it accurately. So they have those kinds of people around. So it's not like they wouldn't have known that this gunshot was possibly survivable. They know that. Believe me, they do. And Nicotero is always had that level of detail in his work, which is why he's one of the foremost special effects guys in the world. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this. The rest, I mean, Christine Woods, she could be lying. She could be, you could be right. She could be telling the truth as she knows it, but I think it's more likely that she has talking points, and she was just told, you can mention this, stay away from everything else, and so she did. But yeah, you said the interview was really short and she didn't talk too much about it. That's kind of what I thought when I listened to it a couple of years ago. So yeah, this is definitely really interesting to look at, but I'm not reading into it as a huge indicator one way or the other about Beth's return. So it'll be interesting when she comes back to learn. I just hope they tell us how long everybody knew about this, which I think they will, because they told us that about Glenn and Abraham after the episode aired, certainly not before. We learned that everyone had known for a good year, all the main characters, and Michael Cudlitz and Stephen Yeun had known for 2 years. So I just want to know when everyone knew so we can point the finger and be like, we knew they were lying. We knew they had talking points, because I'm absolutely positive that's going to be the case. All right, let's do one more. I started thinking about TWD's Season 5 trailer, and that was released at Comic-Con back in 2014. The panel was on August 17th when the trailer got released. I loved that trailer and still watch it from time to time because it got me so hyped for the season, and the Beth Coda shot me to the moon. But I realized that all of the footage they used in the trailer only went up to episode 6 when Carol and Daryl go to Atlanta and then Carol gets taken. Then 5, 7, 5, 8 is where it gets wonky because there's no footage shown from those episodes in the trailer. Maybe they hadn't filmed it yet, but this is where the rewrite theory could come into play. Well, theoretically, you're right that could be the case, but you also have to realize that that's generally the case with most of the trailers. Most of the trailers only have footage from the first, I would say, 3 or 4 episodes. It's actually odd to have them from all the way up through 6. But see, when I look at that, you look at it as in it could have been rewritten at that point. I look at it as those were pivotal episodes. They were not showing any of those in the trailer, no matter what, because they were trying to hide what happened in them. So, it's common for them to only have a limited amount of footage that they put in the trailers, but you also have to realize how far in advance they film. So, I mean, it takes, I've heard different numbers over the years, but I think it generally takes 2 weeks usually to film an episode. And of course it can be longer if they have big action sequences or whatever, or if they're going somewhere. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of things that could extend that or compress it. But for the most part, the season is almost completely filmed long before they show the trailer. And they might go back to have to do, they often do things called reshoots where they just need an extra angle so everybody gets back into costume and just does, I mean, it's like really kind of tedious because they're not doing much action. They just realize there's a couple of angles or a couple of shots they didn't get that they want for the editing. And so they might go back and do those later on. But they're not rehashing storylines and refilming things all the way up until the episode airs. I mean, guys, that's just not a thing in the industry. It's just not. They do it way before that, and they might still be editing up until then, but they're not still putting together storylines that late. So, you know, it's just a matter of understanding how early they film, and that's an industry-wide thing. They never do it that last minute because they'd be pushing the deadline too much, and it takes too long to put together the episode in terms of the editing, putting together music, making sure everything lines up, making sure everything's continuous. I mean, it's a lot of work. As someone who's done some audio and video editing, and I absolutely hate it, I don't like doing it, it's just not my thing, it's really tedious, and it takes a long time, and I've never edited anything that's more than a few minutes long, right? I mean, to have to edit an hour-long episode with all this different footage to put in, all of the audio tracks, the music, the cuts, all of it. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. So they would not still be editing an episode only like a month before that episode is set to air. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think it's more interesting that they didn't show any of that footage, maybe because that was the biggest thing that was happening in the season, and they were just not going to put that in the trailer. But again, it's pretty common for them to only have even the first 2 or 3 episodes featured in the trailer. So overall, I wouldn't read too much into that, at least not as an indicator that she isn't coming back. All right, I am going to call it there for today, but I'll be back tomorrow with more of your questions to answer. Everyone have a wonderful Monday.